These are two outfielders having the exact same reaction to the exact same play during the MLB playoffs. A fan interfered with the ball, preventing both Tony Tarasco on the left and Moises Alou on the right from making an out that would have helped their team win a game. While the story of each player's team ends up the same, they were both bounced from the playoffs, what happened to the fan that interfered could not be any more different. The story of Steve Bartman has been told a many a time, so there is really no need for us to rehash it. However, 7 years earlier, the exact same thing happened during a league championship series. Unlike Bartman, however, Jeffrey Maier was treated as a hero who reaped the benefits of his actions in the days, weeks, and years that followed. There was no hiding or witness protection, no being the butt of any jokes, no 30 for 30. It's wildly unfair that one has become a pariah and the other a hero. The world needs to address an important philosophical question about baseball, fan interference, Steve Bartman, and Jeffrey Maier. It's October 9th, 1996, and we're at Yankee Stadium. The New York Yankees dynasty is still a gleam in George Steinbrenner's eye at this point. The team taking the field isn't quite the powerhouse it would become in later years. Cecil Fielder is DHing, Tim Raines is batting leadoff, Wade Boggs is manning third base, and Darryl Strawberry even makes an appearance off the bench in this evening. They are going up against a Baltimore Orioles squad that may not have been, but definitely was, powered by steroids. You've got Rafael Palmeiro and Brady Anderson's mythical 50 home run season. Roberto Alomar may not have been on the juice, but he was prone to have a roid rage-esque freakout every now and again. Oh, and of course, Cal Ripken's there playing every day too. Anyway, the Yankees were good that season, winning the AL East, while Baltimore snuck into the playoffs via the wild card, finishing 4 games back in the division. In a huge upset, the Orioles knocked off the Indians, the team that finished with the best record in baseball that year, in the ALDS, setting up a showdown with New York. Somewhat surprisingly, the Yankees found themselves trailing the Orioles 4-3 in the bottom of the 8th inning during Game 1 of the ALCS. Derek Jeter steps in the batter's box, and the rest, as they say, is history.
And 2 runners in both the 5th and the 6th. In right field, Tarasco going back to the track, to the wall. And what happens here? He contends that a fan reaches up and touches it. But Richie Garcia says no, it's a home run.
The first thing to note is outfield umpire Richie Garcia, who you can see sprinting down the right field line after Jeter makes contact. It is clear he's tracking the ball in the air while running, so he seems to be aware of what's happening. The umpire then disappears from the screen, not reappearing until Tony Tarasco confronts him. Garcia passionately upholds his botched call, which simultaneously delights the Yankee Stadium crowd and infuriates the entire Baltimore Orioles roster. The following day, Garcia admitted his mistake, although he refused to admit that Tarasco would have caught the ball despite what everyone saw. Here's what he said about the incident. "I feel really bad about it. I don't think that play cost the game any more than the fly ball hit to left field in the first inning. There were 9 innings in the game, and that's part of the game. I feel bad about it. I don't feel responsible for the Orioles losing." The good news for Garcia is that his role in this has become nothing more than a footnote in history. That's because everybody and their brother's mother wanted a piece of the kid who made the quote-unquote play, Jeffrey Maier. I need to take a 20-second time out here before we go any further on the Jeffrey Maier story. Can we talk about how bullshit this whole situation is? Here's a kid. Not only does he get to go to an MLB playoff game in 1996 when people actually cared about baseball, but then at the event, he misbehaves and is treated like some fucking like special deal, like he did some heroic act. If I had done that ever, I would have been in trouble. And this is just what grinds on me about Jeffrey Maier, because me and him are the same age. I was 13 when this happened, and I loved going to baseball games, and no one was taking me to a playoff game. And even if I did get to go, like, I would have never been close enough to get anywhere near a foul ball. And yet this little shithead gotta go to the game, gotta do something he shouldn't have been doing, and isn't getting this hero's welcome. He's like on TV everywhere. They invited him to a World Series game. That is some bullshit. Okay, so with that out of my system, let's continue. If Garcia gets the call correct and dings Maier for fan interference, that kid probably doesn't make it out of Yankee Stadium alive. Not only does he get bailed out by an incompetent decision, but he becomes a hero because of that. Jeffrey Maier was extremely lucky he was a 12-year-old kid when this happened. A big part of the narrative of the time was boys will be boys. His actions were somehow deemed by the media to be quaint. It was this weird feel-good story everywhere in America outside of Baltimore. But what if Maier and that dude in the white hoodie had switched places? There's something infinitely less charming about a buzzed New Yorker interfering in a professional sporting contest. There's no way White Hoodie Guy becomes a legend. He's most likely asked to leave the stadium before the game ends, regardless of which way the call would end up going. That's one of the most peculiar things about the Maier story. He was on all of these talk shows, got a ton of attention, and was celebrated. But had anyone over the age of 21 leaned over the wall at Yankee Stadium and interfered, they wouldn't have gotten that slot on the Today Show. People were quick to blame Steve Bartman for the Chicago Cubs losing Game 6 to the Florida Marlins in 2003. The reality was, Chicago had like a million other chances to win the NLCS after his interference. It was a similar story for the Orioles. Derek Jeter's home run that had an assist from Maier only tied the game. The Yankees actually went on to win it in 11 innings thanks to a Bernie Williams home run. But Baltimore won Game 2 of the 1996 ALCS anyway. Of course, they did lose the next 3 games after that to a New York team that was vastly superior to them. There's always been some opining, especially in Maryland, about what would have happened had the Orioles not lost Game 1. The reality is that it's hard to envision Baltimore advancing to the 1996 World Series, regardless of Maier's fan interference. Even if New York went to Baltimore down 0-2, they were more talented, and they had actually beaten Baltimore 10-3 in the regular season series. The only real difference historically is that it would have taken the Yankees 6 or 7 games and not 5 to advance to the World Series. As for Maier, he's lived a pretty sweet life all things considered, at least when compared to the hell Bartman's had to go through. For starters, he got to meet Jeter ahead of spring training in 1997 and receive some swag from the shortstop. Maier went on to play baseball in college, had several cool internships in baseball after graduating, and the New York Times has interviewed him about fan interference in the years that have followed that. It's not been a bad life at all. The stories of Jeffrey Maier and Steve Bartman present us with this weird philosophical question. There can be no doubt that each guy was doing the exact same thing with the exact same intent. They both leaned over a rail, they both interfered with play, trying to catch a baseball. There was no inherent good versus inherent bad. They were just acting instinctually, if you will. And yet, Jeffrey Maier was championed as some hero who saved the day for the New York Yankees. And Steve Bartman, on the other hand, well, we pretty much know his story. So, where does this leave the world? Like, if we act, are our actions anything? Like, are our actions good or are our actions bad? Are they inherently good or bad? Or are our actions simply a byproduct of what everyone around us thinks they are? I mean, that's the philosophy of this ridiculous situation. Personally, it's totally unfair for society to proclaim one as a hero and one as a villain because one was a 12-year-old brat and the other was a 30-year-old doofus. Like, that's kind of nonsense if you think about it. And yet that's what we did anyway. So it's always these two stories are so similar and yet we look at them so differently, and it's a very interesting philosophical question that needs to be discussed because, I mean, really, Steve Bartman and Jeffrey Maier are the same person. They're just sort of in different scenarios at different times. Long story short, Jeffrey Maier should have never been proclaimed as some kid star. He never should have been on the Today Show. It's nonsense that he got all of this 15 minutes of fame because he was misbehaving. That's ridiculous. It's so dumb. And yet he got it, and I think, at least for my inner 13-year-old, it still kind of pisses me off to this day, but what are you gonna do? The real story here is that if you're at a baseball game and you lean over the rail to try to catch a foul ball or a home run or anything in play, that act will not be seen as positive or negative on your own. It will be judged and determined by those around you. And that kind of sucks. Anyway, for the Touchback, I'm Cheyenne Hollis, and don't forget, as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.